Well, I'm delighted to say that joining me on the Godcast is Chris Casper. Chris is a former professional footballer who played for Manchester United before moving on, playing for Bournemouth and Swindon, and also played for Reading before a shocking injury took his career from him at the age of 24, Chris, was it? Yeah, 24. And now he is the Director of Football at League Two side Salford City. Chris, it's great for you to come on the Godcast. How are you doing?
Yeah, no, absolute pleasure, mate, and great to catch up again after all these years.
It's been a while. Many people will know that you are the son of Burnley Football Club legend Frank Casper, but they might not know that you're brother to lifelong Spandau Ballet fan Lee.
Yeah, the what was it? Is it the modern romance era? I think of the early mid-80s.
Do you
Spandau
know
Ballet and Duran Duran and all them kind of groups. Yeah.
Do you know the story of your brother and my Spandau Ballet LP?
I don't, mate. No, if you would like to share it, then that'd be great.
Well, he was a Spandau Ballet fan, and I lent him an album in about 1987. And I've mentioned it a few times and never got it until I became a vicar. And then one night, about 3 years ago, your brother knocked on my front door and he just said, "I'm just bringing your record back." That's quite a nice story.
You're lucky he'd not sold it.
Well, it looked quite soiled. It could have been secondhand. And then, we were just saying before, we had a trip to La Manga together, didn't we? And not seen you for many years, but I did actually spot you in Burnley once. But this was when you were playing for United, and I knew you'd kind of made your way in life because you were looking in the window at Ratner's, and I thought to myself, should I say hello?
Yeah, it was probably around about the time. It was probably around about the time to possibly get engaged. Yeah.
Yeah, so I didn't bother. I thought he's not going to want to talk to me, but looking in Ratner's these days. So let's take a trip down memory lane. Chris, you Burnley lad, and St Theodore's was your school.
Yeah.
And your brother went to Edgen, same as me, didn't he? How did you end up at St Theodore's? Was it because of their sporting kind of reputation?
Yeah, a few of my friends from the year before, Nick Waldron and Carl Horrocks, they'd gone to St Theodore's, but it just had a brilliant reputation for sport. The facilities weren't great. They were very average, little sports hall and things like that, but they had a reputation for really loving the sport, and a lot of good footballers had come through the system as well. So it was a perfect school for me. I loved it.
Yeah, and it was a Roman Catholic school as well. Was that did that create good memories for you from that side of things, or something that didn't really you spend too much time worrying about?
No, I'm not a Roman Catholic, so I was lucky to get it in the first place. I think my dad went to visit Mr. Martland, Jerry Martland, who sadly passed away not long ago. And I think that it was at a time there where I think probably a third of the lads in there, because it was an all-boys school, were non-Catholic as well. I come from a Church of England school, Cliviger, and I was fortunate to get in, really.
Yeah. With your footballing talent, Chris, how old were you when people were making noises about your potential? Was it from a really young age, or were you mid-teens? When was it?
Yeah, I'd always been around football, to be fair, Alex. My dad, I didn't get to see my dad play. He retired before I was born. But when he went straight into coaching the youth team at Burnley and the first team, and then obviously became the first team manager. So Saturday was always game day for me, football, whether that was for the school team in the morning, and then a game watching my dad's team play in the afternoon, whether that be Burnley or Bury, and then when obviously went back to Burnley as well. So every Saturday was game day as far as I was concerned. So I was always immersed in the culture of football. And then, obviously played it from a really young age with my friends in Cliviger, and then going to a school like St Theodore's, where the school team was really, it was an honour to get into. We've got some really good players. John Mullin being one, who obviously went on to play in the Premier League with Sunderland. Dean Stowe was another good, talented footballer as well. So we had some good players, and it was, like I say, a privilege to get into the team. So from there, getting into the town team was where I got spotted at the age of 13 or 14 by Joe Brown, an ex-Burnley first team coach. He was scouting for Man United, and I got invited to go along to trials within in the school holidays, and it went from there really. So like I say, it's been in my family and in my blood ever since I could run around and kick a ball, really.
I suppose with you being a Burnley lad and your dad, being a club legend, I suppose people may ask the question, why never Burnley? Were Burnley just was it wrong time, wrong place for you to be at Burnley, or was United always the preferred option?
Yeah, Burnley were in the fourth division at the time, and even though I'm a Burnley lad and a big Burnley fan, it was a time at Manchester United where they were starting to win the league, starting to win things. The manager had put together a good group of players. Won the FA Cup, won the European Cup, Winners' Cup the following year. So you could see that things were happening at the club, and put together some good young players as well, obviously, with the youth team that we were in at United. So, like I said, Man United, Burnley's always, it's the biggest club around here. There's no question about that. And to every Burnley fan, they're the biggest club in the world, and rightly so. But Manchester United is a massive club as well. And, when I got offered a really good length of contract as well when I was young. So from 14, I got a 4-year contract, so it kind of took care of that, the next part of my career really, and not one that I could turn down and didn't want to turn down, because it wasn't just that, it was the coaches that were there, Eric Harrison, Nobby Stiles, Brian Kidd, and the manager. There were really good people around, so
Can you remember walking in on your first day? Who was the first kind of coach that took you under their wing in the early days at United?
Yeah, the first day, I seem to think it was the 9th of July 1991 when I was an apprentice. And in these days, nowadays, lads, when they're apprentices and scholars, they have like a week's induction, and they go about and they get shown this and shown that. We were on the training ground at 10:30, and we were taken care of, and we told what was what we needed to do, what we had to do, what we shouldn't do. But you were in work. You'd left school 6 weeks before, and you were in a man's world there now, in a professional environment. And the first 2 or 3 days, I was training. We had what you call a round robin, where everybody in the club was involved in a 5-a-side tournament and a small-sided games tournament. And I was on the team with Mark Hughes and Neil Webb and people like that, who I still got posters of the team on my wall, and here I am training with them. So it's a bit of a reality check, a bit surreal as well at times. And you're getting into the club, and Brian Robson's walking past you, who was a big hero of mine in the in the 80s. So a little bit surreal, but you just got on with it. That's there was no fanfare, no frills or anything like that. You were expected to work, to go to work and do as well as you could do every single day. Like I say, Eric Harrison was a real big advocate of that. Fantastic guy, drove standards. Worked you hard, but it was really fair as well. And like I say, that's what attracted me to the club. The likes of like I said, Eric and Nobby and Kiddo.
Were you living at home, or did you go in digs at United?
I spent a week in digs, and I'm a home bird, me, Alex. I miss my family, miss my mum, miss my friends. So I ended up getting I think it was the X43 that goes from Burnley into Manchester. The manager was really good with me as well. Sir Alex, he got me in and said, look, you know, if you're not happy in your digs, it just wasn't for me. I needed to, like I say, I miss my friends and my family and that. So he said, look, there's no problem with that. If you're late, you know, if the bus is a bit late or anything, don't worry about it. And it was brilliant for me, you know, fantastic the way that, you know, the manager of a massive club took a, you know, to heart the cares and the feelings of a 16-year-old. And, you know, that's the kind of thing that sets him apart, really, that kind of interest and that welfare, really, of all the players that were at the club.
Yeah. And how old were you when you got your pro contract?
After 2 years scholarship, so when I was 18. And
did the
club, that had already been.
Did the club have a pathway for you, Chris? Did they say, right, here's your contract, we'd like to see you at this level by then, this level by then, and this level by then? How did it work? Was that kind of a conversation?
No. What you'd do is you'd see Eric Harrison. You'd have a meeting with him probably every 7 or 8 weeks. You'd go through your development. You'd go through areas that you'd be expected to work on, and areas that you were good at, and areas that you needed to improve on. But there was none of this, you know, soft talk or anything like that. It was, look, you carry on doing what you're doing, you'll play in the first team. That was it. Keep doing what you're doing, you'll get in and around the first team. No question about that. To some others, that was an individual meeting. To others, it might have been a little bit different. And, you know, I didn't care about anybody else. You always do as a footballer, you care about yourself. You know, and I know other players had the same thing said to them. You like Paul Scholes and Gary Neville and Nicky Butt and people like that. Just keep doing what you're doing, and you'll be fine. And you know, so that was it, really. It wasn't dressed up in any way, shape, or form, or, you know, none of these fancy plans and all the rest of it. It was just, you were spoken to straight, honestly and clearly. I appreciated being treated like that.
Yeah. And then you found yourself in this kind of incredible side, didn't you? And how I was wondering, I mean, you know, a lot of people talk about that team, but how soon in that formation of that team did you actually realise that this was going to be special? Because you won the FA Youth Cup then, and then you went on to win where you played for the under-18s, didn't you, for England? But that United youth team, how soon did you realise, God, this has got real potential here?
I think in the second year, once we'd won the Youth Cup, and we won it with a young team as well. I mean, the big difference for us in the semi-final in the first leg against Tottenham was Ryan Giggs played, and then in the second leg in the second leg of the final at home against Crystal Palace, Ryan played again. I mean, to be fair, we beat Tottenham down there 2-1 as well without Ryan, and we beat Crystal Palace as well 3-1 in the first leg. But Ryan just gave us that, you know, that quality. He was out of everybody in that team at that time. You know, there was no expectation of that team being as good as it would go on to be, with the, you know, amount of players that came through and went on to have such fantastic careers. There was only one who was going to go on to be a superstar that you knew was going to be a fantastic player, and that was Ryan, because he was like that from a young kid. I played against him when he was 13, 14 for Salford Boys when I played for Burnley Town team, and he was just on a different level altogether. You know, so in the second year, what you do is you play in the A team, which was an open age group, but you play against a lot of men and a lot of tough teams. You know, you play Liverpool and Man City, and, you know, there'd be some really good players playing for them. But then you play Morecambe away and Marine away at their grounds, which was their reserves. And for us as 17-year-olds, they were tough games, because, you know, like I say, there were men fighting to get into their first team for that extra little bit of money. Man United were always a scalp as well. You've got to accept that. So it was only in the second year where Eric kept all the scholars and all the apprentices together playing in that team. And at the start of the season, we played Crewe, and there must have been about 10, 15 people there watching. By Christmas, there must have been 300 or 400 watching us at the Cliff. You know, word had got out that, you know, it was starting to become a special group, that, and, breaking into the reserves, being in and around the first team squad, and the manager took us to the, to European games and things like that. So we'd started to be noticed on the back of that. And then obviously in the following year, at the end of the second year of my apprenticeship, I'd captained England, and then we went on to win the European Championships as well. Against we beat France, Holland, and Spain to get to the final. Beat Turkey in the final, in front of 30,000 at Notts Forest live on Sky. So some fantastic experiences for young lads, and you can't recreate that, and you can't be taught that. You've got to go through that, and there were great times. There were, pressure. It was pressure, and say you're playing live on TV, but that's what you've always wanted, and the enjoyment was fantastic, especially winning the final was.
Just we'll come to your leadership roles in a bit, Chris. But how much part of that? Obviously, the talent is essential, but how essential is the teamwork side of it? Pulling in the right direction and all kind of bailing each other out in difficult moments. Was that team spirit evident and clear from an early start?
Yeah, we were a very close group. We were a big group, to be fair. The year that I was in, with the likes of obviously Gary Neville and Scholesy and that, but we'd got, I think it was about 12 or 13 in the group, so it was quite a big group. But we were close. We would stick up for each other. We'd support each other on the pitch. So there was that team spirit and bonding there from an early age. And obviously it's carried on, and you still see quite a few of the lads around and keep in contact with them. So, but yeah, it was a great group to be in, some really good lads.
Yeah, and some of the lads obviously progressed quickly to the first team and became regulars. But I suppose one of the things playing for one of the biggest clubs in the world is sometimes you got to bide your time. That was the case for you, was it, Chris? Who were the centre halves in your way, as it were?
Yeah, to be fair, I broke in 94 in pre-season. I'd done really well in pre-season training. The manager took me to Ireland on a pre-season trip with the first team. It was only me. I think me and Keith Gillespie went, and then I was on the bench for the Charity Shield against Blackburn. Me, Keith, and Nicky. And then a couple of weeks later, just before the first game of the season in the reserves, I badly damaged my ankle. It was the day before, and I was out for about 3 months. I came back a little bit too early because the manager had played players at Port Vale in the Coca-Cola Cup, as it was then, in the League Cup. And I wanted my chance in that, but didn't himself. And I played in the return leg at Old Trafford, and we won. I think we won 2-0. But didn't really do myself justice, and I struggled to overcome the injury for a good couple of months, to be fair. And obviously the lads took their chances, and the rest is history, as they say. But no, I got my chance fair and square, and can't complain about that.
How frustrating a time was that for you, where you were so close to being a regular? Was it a difficult time for you?
Yeah. It's the manager had gone out and brought in David May from Blackburn, predominantly as a right back, really, but Maisie ended up playing centre half. Ronnie Johnson came in as well around about the same time. Henning Berg just a little bit later, and obviously towards the end when I left, Jap Stam. I was battling against probably the best two centre half pair in the Premier League at the time. Well, definitely at the time, and probably one of the best pairings that the Premier League's had in Steve Bruce and Gary Pallister. They were a fantastic partnership. So it was tough to break through, and like I said, just getting so close was frustrating. You go on a lot of trips with the first team, be involved with the first team, train regular with them. You were in European squads and Premier League squads and things like that. But just not to get as many appearances as I would have liked. Still disappoints me to this day, and you feel like you failed, even though you played a few games for United and that. But it wasn't enough for me, and you still think, what if? You've got to move on, don't get me wrong, but it's still disappointing that, like I said, I didn't play more games for United.
So how difficult was it to leave?
No, it was easy because I'd got to the stage where I was 23. Like I say, Jaap Stam had been signed in the summer. So, and you got Wes Brown coming through as well. Wes was a really good, talented player. Obviously went on to have a great career as well. So I knew my time but I needed to move on for the sake of my career and, get some first team games under my belt. And that's why I moved to, I initially moved to Bournemouth. It wasn't to ever sign permanently for Bournemouth. That was to purely pick up experience of playing in the first team. Swindon the following year, we were doing really well, top of the championship. Swindon wanted to buy me, but Man United and Swindon couldn't agree a fee. And then the following year, I got signed for. I got sold to Reading for, I think, it was about 300 grand or something like that, which in those days was a decent fee, to be fair. It was a club moving forward that just moved into the Majeski Stadium.
Yeah.
Tommy Burns was the manager, and Tommy was such a good guy, really lovely man. And I'd done well in my initial period on loan. So when I got offered a 3.5-year contract and couldn't really resist it and turn it down. In hindsight, I probably wouldn't have moved away knowing what I'd have known, but it is what it is, and you make the decisions and you live and die by them. So I've no qualms on that score.
So there's no X43 from Burnley to Reading, Chris. So was that a tricky move for you? Did you settle quickly?
Yeah, I settled quickly. I moved down with my then girlfriend. And we got married in the summer. So I moved down in January in 1999. So I got married in the summer. But by the end of the year, obviously the career was finished, even though I tried to come back from the injury. But Boxing Day '99 was the last time I played a professional game, and in hindsight, like I say, it's an hand that you get dealt, and you've got to deal with it. And psychologically, it still is tough at times, but you've got to deal with that. And there's far worse people off than yourself. But there's always that what ifs. It was a 1 o'clock kickoff on a Sunday and all the rest of it. I won the corner that ultimately the tackle came from, and it's like, it's tough at times. You blame yourself an awful lot as well, and for putting your family through it, putting my wife through it, who, I wouldn't have come through it if it wouldn't have been for my wife Karen. So it's still tough to think about, but like I say, you've got to move on as well.
I was gonna ask you what you remember of that day when you had that dreadful injury. Just remind us what the injury was, Chris, and how soon you knew it was a really serious problem.
Well, I knew straight away because I went one way and the bottom half of my shin went the other way. So I was, it had snapped in half, and I knew I could feel it. I saw it and felt it as well. So it was a double leg break. So my tibia and fibula were both snapped in half. My ankle was pretty badly damaged, and my knee was damaged as well. And I kind of knew there and then, coming off the pitch, that psychologically it was going to be tough. I'd seen a couple of my friends have similar kind of injuries. A good friend of mine, who's still a very good friend of mine, Ben Thornley, got a bad injury against Blackburn in '94, and Ben was out of that youth team, probably behind Ryan, was probably the best player in there. He was a fantastic player, and he got wiped out by Nicky Marker in a reserve game at Gig Lane, and it was horrendous. His knee was smashed to bits, and he did come back to a certain level, but he was never the same player. And a couple of months, about 6 months before, I think, a lad who we had at United called Graham Tomlinson. Graham got badly injured as well at Luton, and his leg was a mess, and again never came back to anywhere near the level that he was at before. So I kind of knew coming off the pitch that it was going to be tough, and it proved to be. My fibula, it's they call it the non-weight bearing bone, and if you're not a sportsman, it doesn't really matter. But when you're a sportsman, you're getting knocks on it. My fibula didn't heal. I ended up having a bone graft on it after after nearly 2 years, which kept me out for another 10 months. So I'd have been 3 years into an injury that, and I was out of contract at the end of the first year. So there was just no way I could have carried on, really. I couldn't have done it for my family. I had to move on quickly.
So how long, Chris, was it from the injury to the retirement? Was it? Can you remember?
Yeah, it was 2 years. It was 2 years, and then I went to work at Bath University, and then, like I say, about 4 or 5 months, about 3 or 4 months later, I had the bone graft to fix my fibula, because it was still giving me pain, even though I wasn't playing anymore. I was, twisting and turning. Even lying on it in bed was really painful. I actually played with it. I came back after 14 months and played some reserve games and trained and that, but I was still, in effect, playing with a broken leg. The gap was still there, and the surgeon, the specialist I used to see wasn't very good, obviously, and I just got to a stage where I just lost all kind of self-esteem, really. I kicked a ball. I'd not planned on retiring, and I think it was a day before a game, and I wasn't involved in the game the day after, and I just gone to kick a ball, and there was no conviction with it. And I saw a couple of younger lads at Reading just look over, and they never said anything. They didn't laugh or anything.
No.
But there was nothing about it, and I just walked off the pitch and just knocked on the manager's door, Alan Pardew, and said, "Gaffer, I can't do this anymore." And he just said, "Just get yourself home, and we'll sort it out next week after the game." And I did, and that was it, really. Like I said, there'd been no great planning behind it. It was just kind of, I just knew I'd no, like I said, no self-esteem, and lack of, people didn't lack respect if that wasn't the case, but I could just sense that I wasn't challenging. I wasn't in anybody's eyes seriously challenging for a place in the first team, because I just physically couldn't because of the injury. So I was kidding myself to a certain degree, and I had to do what was right for my family.
I sense your sadness, Chris, to be fair, and because it's 24 is not an age to retire from football, is it? It's like it's where you just should be reaching your peak of the game, really, and really flourishing and just performing to the best of your ability. How did that play with your head in the months after? Was it really tough for you? Did you get any help, for example?
Yeah, I saw a psychologist. She was good, but she had her own personal problems not longer after I'd seen her, to be fair, and her problems mine paled into insignificance on what she was going through. So I couldn't continue to see her, and I just you just got to find a way, and you just got to battle away. And I probably should have spoken to more people. There's no question about it. But to be fair, I got a job quite quickly. I went to work at Bath University because I lived near Bath at the time, and I was doing quite a bit of my rehab, just training in the gym there. They were good enough to let me use the gym there. And a guy called Jed Roddy, who went on to work for again at the Premier League years later. Jed was running the team Bath team at the time and the university team, and asked me if I wanted to get involved with the coaching side of things. I've always been interested in that, and quickly got through my coaching badges, and had a pretty successful time there. We got through the first round of the FA Cup and things like that. So it was a good time for us. Yeah. I enjoyed coaching.
Chris, can I ask, do you think things have changed for footballers? I've been fortunate to interview a few football guys. Andy Payton, his troubles were very public, but he kind of felt a bit abandoned, I think, by the football community after his career had ended. Do you think the football fraternity is better at it now than it used to be for people? Even for some of the young lads that are released from youth terms, all their dreams have ended at a very young age. Are things better than they used to be?
Possibly. I mean, to be fair, Alex, I could only speak highly of the PFA and the LMA for the way that I've been supported in my life after football. The education for further education that I've been supported in with regard to coaching or formal education, as I'm currently doing at university. They've been good to support me on that. So I never I know Andy well and that, and obviously he's his issues have been well documented, and he's done. He's an absolute inspiration for what he's come through and where he's at now in his life. He really is. But I never really had to go down that side. Thankfully, I never had problems with drinking and gambling and drugs and things like that. I was fortunate that my mental health wasn't wasn't affected as it would have been with other people, and that's just me being fortunate. That's nothing to do with me as a person and what I went out of my way to do, to be different or anything like that. I'm just fortunate that was the case, but other people aren't so lucky. And thankfully, Andy's, people like Andy have come through that and gone on to have really good lives on the back of that.
And you had this role with the Premier League, Chris. Just tell us about what that was. I was interested to see that you did that.
Yeah, it was a club support manager. So it was at the time the new system was coming out, the EPPP, the Elite Player Performance Plan. So years after I'd worked with Jed at Team Bath, Jed was the head of youth for the Premier League, and there were 5 of us brought in, and we worked for a cluster of clubs. So my clubs were Liverpool, Newcastle, Manchester United, Sunderland and Bolton to begin with, and basically was there as a support to help them through the new system of EPPP, put things in place and help them put things in place that they were going to need to move forward. And I also did a coach education program called the Leadership Journey, which was really good. I enjoyed working with the younger coaches on that as well. And you'd give support to the scholars. You'd do reviews with them every 12 weeks. So you'd sit down and chat to them individually just to make sure they were okay. And, because sometimes they can't do that with members of staff at their own club, because I think they think that it's going to be held against them. And, the club thinks, they're complaining about them or, they're moaning and groaning. But actually, when you're a bit removed from it, they open up to you, and, just having that chat can help as well. So there was loads of different things to it, but I really enjoyed it, and, some great clubs to work with,
And now you're at Salford, and I guess it's the connection with the guys from United that brought you back together. How's that role going? Is it a role you're enjoying? You feel you're flourishing at Salford?
Yeah, I'm really enjoying it. We've had two promotions in 3 years. The club's very, very well backed with the owners. Obviously, the 6 lads that's involved, 6 United lads, and Peter Lim, who's the majority shareholder. So we are given a chance. We're given a chance to bring good players in. Unfortunately, we just changed managers, but that's football and that happens.
Chris, can I ask you, mate? Because I don't know you really well, but I know you well enough. I'm just going to ask you. When you've lost a couple of managers this year, and I suppose the club would be not wanting to become a reputation for a sacking club. How difficult is it for you as an individual to kind of be in on those conversations and ultimately tell the gaffer that it's game over? Is it tough for you?
Yeah, it is, because it's like anything else, Alex. They've got feelings. They're human beings, but at the same time, you've got a job to do for the club, and you've got to be as professional as possible. And making the right decisions for the club is the most important thing. And if that means that the manager's got to change, and it's not down to me. Ultimately, I do have an opinion in it, but the owners. I'm different to most other sporting directors in the fact that I work for owners that have got probably 70 or 80 major trophies in the behind them, and hundreds of national caps, and hundreds and thousands of league games, Premier League games. So they actually know what they're on about as well, and they know the game. So it is a collective decision. It's not just my decision to sack a manager. So.
No. And again, I'm going to ask you one more awkward question. When you're looking, Gary Peters has come in, hasn't he? I just want to ask, is that teed up before you sack the manager, or is that completely left till the manager's gone?
Yeah, thankfully it's Gary Boyer, not Gary Peters.
Oh, sorry.
Gary Peters.
Well, actually, Chris, I've got breaking news.
Yeah.
Gary's gone. Gary Peters is in.
Yeah, I think I've made another change in the last half hour, but yeah, no, he's a good man, Gary. As a sporting director, your job is to be prepared for any circumstance. So, on the recruitment side of it, if you lose players and you're in the transfer window, you've got to have players lined up. And it's the same with staff. If you lose staff, then you have to be ready with a replacement. The one with Richie took us a little bit by surprise. I'd known Gary quite a long time. Always found him a really good man. Got a very good reputation in the game for, again, being honest and hardworking, and been a good football man. So when we approached him, it was pretty straightforward, really, and quick, and he wanted to get involved. So he's hit the ground running, and hopefully with the group of players that we've got, we should be okay, and hopefully can at least get in the playoffs and push on there.
Yeah, excellent. And just have a few minutes on Burnley, Chris. You must be as delighted as every other Burnley fan about Burnley's journey over the last 7 or 8 years. I'm a bit older than you, but I never thought I'd see the day Burnley would be in the Premier League, and Sean Dyche has brought that to the town and some, hasn't he? What's your take on Burnley?
No, unbelievable job Sean's done. You like you say, you could only dream about that 10, 15 years ago when, we're battling relegation on the final day from League One to go back into League Two and things like that. And, now the club is, you'd like to think, it never is, it never feels like it is, but it's actually part of the Premier League now. It's a stable Premier League club now. And Sean's done a fantastic job, and the club of themselves, they've backed the manager to a certain degree. I think people always say that, go on about the spending of the money and probably need to invest a little bit more and all the rest of it. But you can safely say that Burnley is such a well-run club from a strategic point of view and a financial point of view that you just can't argue with the way it's run. And, hopefully, with the amount of points that we've got this year, we'll have another season in the Premier League. I think the training grounds are, something now to be really proud of. And, back in the day when it was first opened, Gawthorpe, it was, in the 60s, it was groundbreaking, I suppose. But obviously times change and move on, and it became, it needed a lot of work and a lot of reinvestment into it, and they've done that. And now it's a fantastic training ground. So I see it regularly with my son Charlie when he goes down there. So it's definitely a club that's moved forward in the right way, definitely.
Yeah. And tell us about your lad. He's a goalie, is that right?
Yeah, he is. Yeah, he's a big lad. Like he's coming up 16. And he's got a scholarship at Burnley for the next 2 years, so he's absolutely made up, because he's a massive Burnley fan himself. Loves to go to away games and stand with the fans and all that kind of business. So he loves it, and living the dream, really, Alex. He's been there 4 years. He was an outfield player before that. He had a year at Oldham in the under-9s, and then played grassroots and enjoyed himself playing with his mates. And I think bit similar to my pathway, really, that I wasn't really involved in a club before I was 14, and he was 12 when he got involved there. So I think sometimes kids can be involved too early. I think it stifles their enjoyment out of it. It becomes too serious, too young. Children need to be children and need to enjoy themselves, and, like I say, play with the friends. And football's got to be a love of they've got to love the game. Got to love the game. It can't be a chore. And training 3 times a week, 3 nights a week in the cold when it's when you're 9, 10, 11 years old.
Yeah.
Forget it. Just go and play with your friends, and leave it till a bit later on. Is what I would say.
Yeah. And how's your dad? A lot of Burnley fans will want to know your dad. Is he keeping well?
Yeah, he's good, thanks. Yeah. He has a bit of a problem with his back every now and then, but that's normally after 5 hours gardening. And so yeah, no, he's in good spirits, my dad. Thank you.
And how's Lee? He's got the worst knees in Britain, hasn't he, your brother? Have they been fixed?
I mean, you couldn't ask for a worse trade, with the knees that he's got, being a plumber, because he's forever bending down and, getting his head under sinks and stuff like that. So yeah, it couldn't be any worse for him. But no, he's a great lad. My best mate and that, and get on really well with him. He's such a good guy.
Yeah. Well, it's lovely chatting to you, Chris. It's lovely catching up after all these years, and I'm really made up that your career's, although it was a big sadness for you, it's going in a really positive way. And I know there's a lot of love to your family in Burnley, and long may that continue. You're a lovely family. I don't know you really well, but I know you reasonably well, and it's just you're just dreadful with Spandau Ballet LPs. That's all.
I'll remind him of it. I need to speak to him later on, so I'll remind him of it.
He'll remember. Right, Chris. Well, great. Thanks very much, and all the best for the rest of the season. And who knows, we might see you in the Premier League not too far away.
Yeah, hopefully, mate. No, thank you very much, Alex. Anytime.
Okay, God bless.
Yeah, thank you, and you. See you later.